One of the definitions I heard of humility came from the word meek, which in the ancient Greece religion, I believe it meant power under control. Power under control. I'm controlling my my chair right now, so you can see the subject of this blowing moon bubbles into the universe. I kind of like that one, but usually I just show the moon over my shoulder. So power under control, what does that even mean? And I think it means that maybe it's the true source of freedom is to control ourselves and to not try to control other people unless they are infringing upon our ability to protect ourselves, or trying to take our freedom away in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, most of us don't like that. I think that's even why some people say, well, I'm never getting married, I'm not going to get that ball and chain. And they think they're going to lose their autonomy or something. And really, in relationships, I suspect if they don't make you grow, then you're wasting your time anyway. And the dissolution of most relationships, best that I can tell, have come from people that were being selfish. They couldn't get their way. And truly, the only time I'm unhappy is when God or someone else ain't doing it my way. And I'm not being humble. I want what I want when I want it. And that's the source of most unhappiness. And happiness is truly a choice. I mean, I always think back to this one story in the Christian Bible about Stephen being martyred for his belief systems. He's being stoned to death, and he did the proverbial "forgive them, they don't know what they're doing" routine, but he was like caught up in bliss, and he wasn't angry at even the people that were murdering him. So, it's like, wow. And Christ, when he's up on the cross, he wasn't up there blaming anybody. He said, forgive them, they know not what they do. And as the Romans were down there, stabbing them in the side with the sword, the sword of destiny, instead of calling it the sword of something else, they made it something beautiful instead of ugly. And we all have a choice to do that in life. Remember when that fellow wrote the book, he was a concentration camp survivor. And instead of using it as a point of anger, he turned it into pearls of wisdom and joy and beauty and how to live in peace in this world. Corey Ten Boom also taught that same general thing. And she was the one that was arrested in Germany in World War II for, I guess, hiding Nazis or hitting the Jews from the Nazi Empire. So I'm not a historical, I'm not well versed in all the details of history, but I remember some stories. But man's search for meaning. How can we search for our meaning? That's the name of that book, by the way. I didn't even say it. Hello. But man's search for meaning. How can we even begin to entertain the idea of meaning if we're not willing to plumb the depths of our own souls and try and figure out truly what we are, who we are, and who other people are? How can you know anything about somebody else unless you've really searched the depths of your soul? And if a person has done that and they say something about someone else after having, really looked at all their shortcomings, if that person then is saying something about someone else, I'm going to probably listen to it. I think for myself, but I will certainly give that a little extra attention over what somebody says who's never really made that journey. And there's a lot of things in life that coerce us into doing things that we wouldn't normally do. And when we're honest with ourselves, it's very hard to be coerced by someone outside of ourselves. You know, we can't even see something in somebody else except for we've seen it in ourselves to some degree, you know, and sometimes we have epiphanies and wake ups and we see something somebody else is doing or has done, and we have a wake up call from that. But it's usually the other way around, you know. We can call people on their BS because we know it in ourselves. It's a lot easier to see it in other people, you know, and I know that firsthand. And but back to humility and honesty, it's like people can't embrace the idea of being powerless over something because it's too harsh of a pill to swallow for them, you know. And you know, and if we're addicted to substances and believing that we're powerless over it while we're doing it, that's damn near impossible. But then again, I've heard that impossible is God's favorite word, but we can't get out of our own way. It's hard to see God. And, you know, so it's like I used to think it was impossible for me to be powerless and to lose my willpower. And it wasn't, you know, I mean, I was in my 20s when I came to believe that. And I thought people that were in recovery were just weak-minded punks. And I remember being in the Missouri State Penitentiary and knowing where those recovery people were meeting. And I walked past the chapel where they held their meetings. And I thought, man, I hope one of those weak-minded punks come out of there and say something, you know, to me. I'll slap all the taste right out of their mouth. I literally thought those arrogant words. And it's funny that after all these years, I still remember that. And, you know, those people were some of the few people that were, that got a hold of something that might make them have a chance at not selling their freedom for a drink again. I mean, I sold my freedom for a drink so many times in so many ways. And selling my freedom for a drink landed me in a drunk driving situation where somebody resulted in dying. And somebody had to carry the you know, the memories of that tragic day. And they'll, you know, they said it was the most horrific day of their lives. And they told me that, you know, 40 plus years after it happened. And it's a long time to be alive 60 some years and have one memory that they identify as the worst day of their life. And to think that I had something to do with that, you know, I don't wish that on you or anybody else. And being honest about it is what, you know, my mind didn't want to be. I didn't want to admit I was powerless over alcohol. I didn't want to believe that I was an alcoholic or something like that. But when I got honest about it many years later, I think that opened the door to believe that things could be better for me. It's like, how can you change something you don't acknowledge? So when I realized I was powerless over alcohol, I didn't care if my life was unmanageable. I thought that was exciting, you know. But when I came to believe that a power was greater than myself could restore me to sanity, that only happened after the powerlessness thing got in place, after the honesty about being an alcoholic came to fruition in my in my consciousness. And I began to heal, and I immediately healed enough to believe and have hope that a power greater than me could restore me to my original condition. My original condition being sanity before all the stuff that happened to me in my life. And you can't get to the root of those things without this basic start, you know? And after I came to believe that this power could restore me, I turned my will in my life over to the care of God as I understood God. And I did this all within a couple of minutes, maybe less than a minute, when I realized I couldn't stop throwing up, and I had swore up and down that I didn't want to go back to prison. And if I got caught drinking, I would go back to prison, but I ended up drinking on, August 18th of 90, and violated my supervised release over and over again. And by a miracle, I didn't get arrested. And 3:30 in the morning, as I'm throwing up and I can't stop, and I figured someone would call an ambulance to try and save me, because it was loud, and I just literally was so sick. I feel like I was dying of alcohol poisoning, that I looked at the clock. I realized I was an alcoholic. It was 3:30 in the morning, and I think it was bing, bam, boom. Those three things happened. And it took me years, like 8 years plus, before I could get willing to admit some of the things I'd done wrong in my life to another human being. I admitted them to God 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, whatever. And, with some reluctance within myself, I would think about it a little bit more than a second or two. And, it's very painful to think that I took a life. It's very painful to think that some of the things that have happened to me and that I've done to others in my life happened. And, but I had to let that go. And that's part of the definition of humility. And I no longer have to be coerced, for the most part, to not sell my freedom for a drink anymore. So, sometimes I get harder wake up calls, but, I got myself out of the incomprehensible demoralization of taking that drink over and over again, and the disorientation that would happen in my life, and the moral crisis that would, embrace my life as a result of drinking. And I got to the point in my life where I thought that was normal, and it wasn't until the powerlessness thing happened that I totally realized it's not normal. So I'm going to close this video with the ideas that I always do, is to just remember to tell 3 people a day that you love them. It'll help keep your conscience clean. It'll help keep your gifts clean, and it'll make the world a better place to live in, especially for you. Even if people don't embrace that, it'll make your world better. And it's like forgiveness, people don't have to accept your forgiveness, but you're not doing it just for them anyway. You're doing it mainly for you, right? And it's the same thing with telling people that you love them. And make sure that one of those 3 people you say you love are someone you don't want to say it to. Take the harder battles, and do it because of love, not because of anger, because you're trying to control the world or something. But, do the tough things and you'll get stronger. That's all I'm saying. And the things that are facing this world are going to take some real strength. It's going to take some power under control. Take your power back. I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in to the Incomplete Skeptic once again. Peace out.